Okay, so we're doing fitness this week. So just to start with, who can tell me what fitness is? Like, what is the definition of fitness? Any ideas or guesses?
Is it like being able to do all the work without kind of kind of stressing them,
Yeah,
hurting them?
it's being able to do out the work required without putting unnecessary stress or strain on the body. So why then is fitness so important in riding for the horse? Let's talk about.
So they don't do injuries, like when they're not at peak fitness and they're going around like cross country and they're getting tired, like not pick up their legs as much and it could like cause injuries.
Yeah, so particularly with horses, it's the same with you. If you never did anything and then one day just like got up and decided to go on a 10-mile run, you're going to be in a lot of pain the next day. You'll have damaged muscles. You could pull muscles. You could you could injure yourself in other ways. It's the same with horses. So if your horse isn't fit and you suddenly expect it to do something it's not ready to do, it puts unnecessary strain on the tendons, the ligaments, the muscles, everything like that. As well as that, it's not just like the muscles, it's also like cardiovascular system. So the lungs, they need to be ready. And like all the systems in the body will be affected by how fit the horse is. So it's also the fitter the horse, the more healthy it's going to be in those particular regions. So again, a lot of horse fitness you can relate back to people. So again, if you never ever did exercise, you're going to be putting strain on your cardiovascular system. So it's not quite the same. Well, there is this risk in horses, but if you never ever exercised your horse and then took it for a gallop, it does, like, there is a risk of a heart attack because its heart physically wouldn't be able to keep up with what you're asking of it. Okay. How long do you reckon it takes for this is just something interesting to think about. How long do you guys think it takes for the oxygen delivery to muscles to increase? So if you've got a horse that's doing absolutely nothing and you're starting to gain its fitness, never done anything in its life, how long do you reckon it will take for the oxygen delivery to muscles to increase? Any guesses?
You mean like the oxygen from the lungs to the muscles?
Yeah.
Just normally?
Yeah.
30 seconds?
Okay, no, so I mean if you're trying to gain the fitness, so how long does it take to train the horse's body to increase the amount of oxygen it's delivering?
To get to peak fitness, probably like maybe a month? I don't know.
Yeah, to get to peak fitness, to just see an increase, like just to see a small increase, it's 1 to 2 weeks. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's quite significant, the difference with tendon and ligament strength and bone density. So again, if you're thinking about a young horse, never been ridden before, you get on it, it's going to take 4 to 6 months for that horse to have an increase in the tendon, ligament strength and the bone density. So you want to think about that. If you're ever on a horse that's done absolutely nothing, it might only take 1 to 2 weeks for it to recover breathing wise and for it to be getting oxygen to the muscles, but it's going to take 4 to 6 months for the bones and the tendons and ligaments to strengthen. So again, that's above what you need to know, but I just think it's quite interesting. Talking about fitness, if you have a fitness, say you're on a fitness program, and let's say your horse gets an injury, it's off for 3 weeks, how much fitness do you think it will lose in that time?
Quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's actually the opposite. So if your horse is reasonably fit and you give it up to a month off, it will barely lose any fitness. Any more than that, and it will start to lose fitness. And it's basically a month off, a month reconditioning needed. So another interesting thing to have, if you ever have a horse that just has a small injury and it just needs a couple of weeks, maybe it cuts itself, it's actually not going to lose any fitness in 3 weeks. So that's quite an interesting fact to think about. And just another one is, like, always think with your fitness, with that fact, it's much easier to maintain than regain. So thinking about, do any of you at the end of the seasons, whether it be hunting, eventing, show jumping, dressage, give your horses any time off completely?
Yeah, we do.
Occasionally.
How long do you give them off?
Like up to a month.
Yeah, so in that time, that's like, depending on what you're trying to achieve, that's quite a good amount of time, because that means they're not going to lose fitness, but a month is enough time for them to fully recover. After extreme physical exertion, it takes about 3 weeks for them to fully recover. So let's talk about eventing or hunting, so kind of work similarly. Throughout the entire season, that horse is going to be constantly recovering. It's never going to have its muscles in peak condition. So it's good to give it 3-4 weeks of either significantly decreased work or time off. Any more than that and the horse will start losing fitness. So you just have to consider that when you think about how long you've got to bring it back into work. Okay, so considering we talked about eventing versus hunting, what does it mean by you need different types of fitness for different activities? So Jess, what would you focus on if you were getting a horse fit for pony club? Just general pony club. You've got it's a 13-2 pony, and it's going to do a couple of rallies a week.
You'd probably want to make sure it's fit in like all areas, so show jumping, cross country, and flat work. You wouldn't need it to be at peak fitness if it was only doing a few rallies a week.
Yeah, good. So a bit of generalization. It's not specific to anything. Sophie, what about if you're getting a horse prepared for a Grand Prix dressage test? What areas of fitness would you focus on?
You definitely do lots more schooling, and they need to be in quite high fitness for that. It's very important.
Yeah.
But definitely lots of schooling and like more dressage.
Yeah. Any other ideas of things you might do with getting a dressage horse ready that will be different to, say, a racehorse?
Poles.
Poles, yeah. Pole work. Raised poles. Why does that work?
Gets the core like working and strength.
Yeah, good. It's a good strength and conditioning exercise. What else?
Lunging.
Lunging, yeah. So would you lunge them with any aids? So would you lunge with
like a pursuer, or probably
yeah, depending on the horse's level, maybe you'd lunge with a pursuer or a bungee or side reins. Why is lunging a good exercise for dressage horses?
Because it keeps them moving and like especially bending to the inside when you're going on the circle.
Yeah, it's good for suppleness, and you can work them quite hard on the lunge. What do you need to be careful with if you're using lunging as a form of getting your horse fit?
Isn't it quite hard on their legs?
Yeah, it puts their tendons under quite a lot of stress. So how many times would you lunge a week?
Twice.
One.
Yeah, once, maximum twice.
I was going to say, do you need to make sure you work both sides the same amount?
Yeah, definitely. So make sure they're even. The only time you might make an exception is if you've got a horse that's weak one way. You might work that side longer, but you wouldn't do it every single session. You'd occasionally work one side for a longer amount of time because you don't want to make the other side weak. What else might you do on a dressage horse? Because it can't spend all its time in the school and in the lunge pen. So what else are you going to do?
Hacking.
Yeah, and anything in particular you might do while you're hacking?
We could do lots of hill work.
Yeah, so long and slow hills. So with a dressage horse, they need to be able to work their muscles hard. They don't need to be extremely fit cardiovascular wise, so they don't need to be doing gallops or canter work necessarily, but a long increase in trot in an outline will work their hind end really well. It will keep them active. It's, again, a good strengthening exercise. Any other ideas of what you could do with a dressage horse that might help them? No, that's quite good. Yeah. Okay, who can tell me what differences you'd have if it was a show jumper to a dressage horse?
More jumping work and like grids and exercises.
Yeah, so you'd probably want one jump session in the week and possibly one gymnastics or grid work. Why is gymnastics / grid work a good idea for a show jumping horse?
It makes them think about like their legs and build the correct muscles, like to jump the jumps correctly, which helps them be like more polished in the ring.
Yeah, very good. So yeah, it keeps them coordination good. Keeps them adjustable, and it also normally works their hind end quite well. It's also quite a good thing to keep them engaged and interested, especially if you do something different each week. What else will you do with a show jumper?
Could free jump them.
Yeah, you could free jump them, definitely. Yeah.
More canter work.
Yeah, you'd probably incorporate a little bit more canter work, just because in a show jumping round they're just cantering, whereas dressage they do a bit of both. But you wouldn't really need to do intense canter work. You'd probably go out, like use hacks again, and use interval type training with some canter work. What about for an eventer?
Gallops.
Canter work.
Yeah, and how often would you canter or gallop your horse? Let's talk about if you're peak fitness, you're in the last few weeks running up to a big event. How regularly are you going to gallop your horse?
Maybe
Once
once
a week.
Once a week, yeah, and that's a good general rule to go on. If you need it extra fit, the closest you'd ever get your gallops is 4 days apart. So every 4th day is the closest you'd ever do it. Why do they need time in between gallops or canters?
To recover.
Recover.
Because they've worked really hard.
Yeah.
That hard.
Does this mean they need to have like a day off straight after they gallop?
No.
We have like a leg stretch or like a gentle hack.
Yeah. So you probably wouldn't work them intensely, but as you say, you could do a gentle hack, or that would be quite a good opportunity to do some like gentle raised poles in the school, just in walk and trot, just to loosen them up again. Anything else you'd do for an eventer that might be different from the others?
Would you work on like different terrain, like
Yeah.
like harder and like muddier and like deeper places as well as the normal arena?
Yeah, very good. And why is that an important?
Like on the cross country course, or like if you're show jumping on the grass, or even like in the dressage, they need to like be aware and like be able to deal with like the different ground surfaces.
Yeah, and because fitness is about getting them prepared so they can do the job without getting an injury, basically, that's a really important thing, and it's really easy to forget and skip over because you don't really think about that as something you need to do. But a really good point. So try and do some road work, some work in the school, some work on, as you said, like muddy ground if there is any, some work on hard ground. Don't be afraid of working them on like rutty ground, because their legs need to twist and turn so that their tendons and ligaments can support that, so that if they twist and turn while they're galloping at an event or doing their dressage, it's not going to suddenly go and cause an injury. So considering that, if you're getting an event horse fit, where would you gallop it?
On grass.
Yeah, so ideal ideal scenario would be to canter on grass, because it's most realistic to natural event. And would you, yeah, no, that's fine. We'll talk about the rest later. What about a racehorse? What would you do work-wise with that horse?
On
Yeah, a lot more canter work, a lot more gallop work. They don't, like, you probably wouldn't make them go quick every day. But yeah, a lot of canter work. They don't tend to get the same rest and recovery as other horses do. So thinking about rest and recovery, how much rest and recovery time is needed? Let's say, first of all, just straight after you've done something. So with eventing, how much time do they need before you go and do another event?
2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. You would probably want to sit 2 weeks, absolute minimum 10 days. Why is that different to like dressage or show jumping?
Because they're often on a surface.
Yeah, because they're on a surface, and also because it's quite in the cross country part of it can be, it can be up to 12 minutes worth of galloping, which is kind of close to a marathon for a horse. So they need time to properly recover from that. So yeah, a couple of weeks before you go again, and then have a couple of gentle days and then pick up and go again. What about for show jumping? If you did a show jumping competition on the Saturday, when could you next do a show jumping competition?
Like the following, like
Every week.
Wednesday or something. Like you wouldn't probably need a whole week, like under a week.
Yeah, you could. You can also show jump them the next day. Think about all the tours that go on with show jumpers where they jump Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then they give their horse a week off. Because it puts the horse under stress, but because they're not under severe, they're not galloping for minutes and minutes on end, it's not going to do the same damage to the muscles, so they can afford to show jump a couple of days in a row. And it's the same with dressage. If you go back to racehorses, they're more on the eventing spectrum, so they would need more time off or gentle time after an event. What about, we discussed briefly how much time you'd give it off after the season. Would you ever give your horse time off like during the season?
If you got an injury, maybe, but otherwise, I can go for just more gentle work if you want to give them a bit of rest.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So you want to think about how intense they are. If they say they event, I don't know, 5 alternate weekends in a row, so 2 weeks apart, but 5 events, 5 times in a row, basically. They might need a few weeks, 3 weeks of just gentle maintenance work, just to give everything a time to just recover a little bit, and their brains to recover a little bit before picking up for the second half of the season. Particularly with the ground sometimes being very hard in England, that can be quite a good way to keep your horse happy throughout the summer season. So to event it hard in the spring, give it a few weeks, event it hard in autumn, that type of thing. Okay, let's talk then about a fitness program. So with the one you need to think about for B test is getting your horse fit for eventing up to Pony Club Open / B novice level. So let's talk about if your horse, you've turned your horse away from the winter completely, it's done nothing for a few months. How long before your first event would you start doing something with it?
Probably like 6 weeks, 5,
Yeah.
6 weeks.
Between a month and 2 months.
Yeah,
If it's completely lost all its fitness.
I would say 2 months.
Like
Nearer 2
between
months.
like 9 and 12.
If it's lost all of its fitness, then like 2-3 months, I'd say.
Yeah, so recommended is 12 weeks. So say you finish the eventing season in October, it has half of October, November, December off. It's going to have lost a lot of fitness. So the recommended is 3 months, 12 weeks, to get your horse ready. So what do you do? So we've got 12, what do you
Very
do?
light work.
Yeah, so
Like half an hour.
Kind of hacking and
Yeah. half an hour walking. And as you say, I don't know who said it, but hacking is a vital thing. Some people don't do it as much anymore, but I still think that, and pony clubs still think that hacking and road work is the best way to get your horse fit and maintain its soundness. So week 1, about 30 minutes walking on roads each day. Would you give it a day off?
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't need to, but to keep the horse fresh is quite nice too. And talking about that, if you've got a horse that's very fresh, you bring it in from the field, it's not always possible to do around 30 minutes road work each day. So what might you do instead?
You could lunge it.
Could lunge it. That's a little bit of a risk on their legs though. Anything else you could do?
Like a bit on road and then a bit on grass if they get like really hyper.
Yeah. You can also do, if they're okay to lead, you can hand walk them to start their fitness workup. Because the first few weeks are more about their legs and less about them, like their ridden fitness. So you could walk them in hand if they're being too badly behaved to ride. But yeah, if they're being absolutely horrendous, you'd probably have to stick them on the lunge for a few minutes, but minimize it as much as possible, make the circle as big as possible, and that type of thing. Okay, so that's week 1. What would you then do week 2?
Walking, but like increase it to like an hour.
Yeah, good. So build up to 45 minutes. Week 2, it's just build up to about 45 minutes walking on the road. And then week 3 is increased to 60 minutes and then incorporate a few more hills. So why do you think these 3 weeks of just walking on the road are so vital? Because it sounds pretty boring and long.
Get strength up and bones and tendons.
Yeah, it increases the density of the bones and tendons, starts to get all their muscles working without putting them under too much strain or stress or anything. It also means that you're avoiding turning. It's a lot of straight lines. So again, it's not putting any unnecessary stress on joints and ligaments and tendons. So after that's week 3 of 12. If you've got a horse that you've been lightly hacking, or you've just kept ticking over the winter, maybe it's been ridden in walk 3 times a week, you would miss those first 3 steps and you would go straight in at week 4, which is where you introduce short bits of trotting. How long, like time-wise, would you trot the horse for at first?
Half an hour, less than, probably.
Less than. So this is just, you can do, so when you're getting them fit, you want to think about kind of interval type training with the trot. So what kind of time, how long would you trot them for at a time before them walking and then trotting again?
10 minutes.
10
2
minutes.
minutes.
So to start with, you would just do roughly 2 minutes at a time. Just again, because trotting is a lot more pressure on the bones and the tendons, the ligaments. And again, would you do this out hacking or in the school?
Probably out hacking.
Yeah, still out hacking. Week 5, that's when you start increasing the time spent trotting, and you can start changing the terrain. So start working them on grass where there's twist and turn. You can also, week 5, that's the time that you could start to introduce actual flat work. When you're introducing flat work, how long would you do it for at first?
Probably like
15 minutes, half an hour.
20, yeah, about 20 minutes. So you probably do your warm up, cool off out hacking, and then potentially then go in the school if you want to do the work. Yeah. So how long every day do you think you should be working your horse in this fitness program?
On week 5, or like?
Yeah. So by the time we got to week 5, how many minutes, hours are you going to spend a day on your horse?
Probably an
Probably
hour and a half.
Yeah, about an hour. And you can so you could do 20 minutes in the school, 40 minutes hacking, that type of thing. Okay, so week 6, this is when you can then start them on some proper work. So you can start doing a rotated exercise program, but still mainly hacking and hill work with a bit of flat work, and you can start introducing a bit of jumping. So what do I mean by rotated exercise program?
Like lots of different things.
Yeah, so you do like Monday you'd hack, Tuesday you'd do a bit of flat work, a bit of hacking, Wednesday you might do some hill work, Thursday you might do a little bit of grid work, Friday they might have off, that type of thing. So just something a bit different, but still keeping the pressure quite low still, so not too much. And then week 7 is very similar to week 6, but then you increase the amount of hills you do, and you can also start increasing slow canters, that type of thing. Okay, week 8, what might you introduce in week 8? So now they're cantering, they've done some little jumps, they're doing 20-30 minutes in the school. What type of thing would you add?
More exercises.
Like poles.
Yeah, you might start adding poles, you might start adding a bit more jump training, and this is when you would start kind of doing your canter work. But at this point it would be canter work, not gallop work, so you'd be starting to increase slow canters of 3 or 4 minutes. So you're not galloping them, they're still just in canter, but they're working for that amount of time. And now week 8, so imagine you've got your horse, he's fit, so this is where a lot of people are now, probably, I'm guessing. Your horses are fit, they're in regular work, but they're not ready to go out to an event tomorrow, so they might be show jumping fit or dressage fit. So then you'd introduce them at week 9, and at this point you introduce more canter work, more jump, you might go out to a dressage show or a show jumping show. So this is also when you would start introducing your fast canter works. So again, you wouldn't be doing gallops yet, but you'd be doing fast canters, and again 3 or 4 minutes. What might you do in week 10? So you're 2-3 weeks before your event, 3 weeks before your event, what might you do?
If you have like a
grid work
school
and
where
canter.
yeah.
just do like 3 minutes of cantering, just like twice on each rein, just to get them like to keep working.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. Even if you're not doing it out hacking, every time you school them, you want to think, am I getting them fitter? So make sure you're like, push them. If you're doing if you're schooling them show jumping, create a 12 jump course and check that they've got the fitness to do a 12 jump course. What was it you were saying, Eva?
Like more grid work, and more like exercises.
Yeah.
Like harder exercises for longer.
Yeah. And this is the point you'd probably then go cross-country schooling if you're eventing. And then you'd want to be doing, at this point, probably cantering once a week, hill work a couple of times a week. And at this point, you really start to focus on the discipline-specific training. So you've got 3 weeks to your event. You want to start going, okay, what moves do I need to do in the dressage? What height is the show jumping? Can I jump around a course that height and for 2 minutes? That type of thing. Week 11, it's similar things, increase hill work, etc. And then week 12, when you're ready, they should be fit and ready to go. So thinking about that, if we talk about our canter work, so your horse has its base fitness. You've been doing show jumping events, you've been doing some some dressage events, you've just not started your canter work. So how long before your event should you start your canter work?
Probably like a month.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 3-4 weeks, I would say. And how would you start? So we discussed you start it with slow canters. Who would choose interval training? Who would choose continuous training? Why would you choose either or?
Probably interval, because it gives them a bit of a break in between. But then it means you can actually build it up a bit more, because even just throughout the week, you can kind of say the first day you might do a bit less cantering, and then you can slightly have a bit more cantering in between your trotting kind of throughout the week.
Yep. So if we're taking them to the gallops, we've decided we're going to do some interval training. What would you do for your first session? How long would you spend in canter? How long would you spend in trot or walk?
Time in trot and walk. And then less time in canter. I don't know, a minute, maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah. For interval training, you could probably do, for the first session, I'd probably do something like 2 minutes canter, 2 minutes walk, 3 times. 2 or 3 times depending on their fitness, and then each time increase it. So the next time, if I did 2 minutes canter, I'd do 3 minutes canter, 2 minutes walk, 3 times, and then the next time I'd do 4 minutes, 3 minutes canter, 1 minute walk, but 4 times, and gradually increase it. The week before your event, how long should your intervals be?
You should be able to canter for 12 minutes.
Without any breaks?
Well, a cross-country course is probably around that.
Badminton is around that, but for your B novice, I like the aspirations. But for your B novice Pony Club Open, it's about 5-6 minutes. So you want them to be able to canter continuously for 5-6 minutes without
any breaks.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that over and over again. You'd probably do 4 minute. If you're doing interval, you'd do 4 minutes on, couple of minutes off, 4 minutes on, couple of minutes off, 4 minutes on. If you're doing continuous, you'd do your 6 minutes, and you'd keep them going. How would you test how your fitness work is going? So you're at the gallops. How do you know if they're getting fitter or not?
How much they're like breathing?
Yeah. What about their breathing in particular?
How flared their nose is and how quickly it goes back to normal.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is how quickly they recover. So if you give them a minute rest and they've not recovered and you've only cantered for 2 minutes, they're quite unfit. You want them to be, does anyone know what you want their heart rate to come back to be able to go again? It's less than 120, which is still quite high, but that's when they're ready to go again. And so yeah, you're going to see how they're doing, like how quickly they recover. If you have someone with you who's super horsey and will be able to do it, if they can take the horse's heart rate and actually test it, the quicker the heart rate returns to normal, the better. Okay, so if you're doing continuous canters, you'd probably need to increase the amount of hill work, because often if you're doing a continuous canter, it's going to have to be on flat ground, because otherwise you'll be cantering downhill for half of it. So you've got to consider that as well. In an ideal world, I'd probably do a mixture of interval and continuous, because it works them slightly differently. They're probably working on different terrain for that because of realistically where you'd have to do it. But yeah, 3 to 4 weeks to get them fit and ready for Pony Club event, 12 weeks if they're completely out of work. Okay, so does anyone know what I mean by long reining?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like when you stand behind them and then they walk and you have like reins coming through and their back. So.
Yeah. So you stand behind them and you've got 2 reins. It's like lunging, but 2 reins and you stand behind them. What are the benefits of that over lunging if you're getting your horse fit?
Less hard on their legs.
In what way?
Well, they're not constantly going around in circles. And...
Yeah, you can do straight lines. And it's more similar to riding because you can put pressure on each side from the lunge lines. You can do leg yields. You can do a lot more with a horse on when you're long reining a horse than you can with lunging. What's a negative of it though?
It wouldn't be good for like green nervous.
Yeah, it's much harder to control them, which is why that would be difficult. Or if they're on a circle, there's only so much speed they can pick up. If they're in a straight line, they can pick up quite a lot of speed. It's also more for you to handle because you've got 2 lunge lines to fiddle around with. Okay, what might affect the fitness of your horse throughout the year? What will make it less fit?
Season.
Pardon?
The season.
You're breaking up.
She said the season.
The season plan, I'm guessing?
Like asthma, if they have asthma. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what you're getting at, we couldn't really hear much of that, is like if your horse struggles with, so if it's got asthma, it's going to probably struggle when the pollen count's high, which is spring. So you might have to give it a few quieter weeks at that point. What else might affect the horse's fitness program?
Like
In-
the quality of the grass and how much they're eating and stuff.
Yeah. Why will that affect their fitness program?
Well, because they're heavier and they're like fatter. They're not as fit.
Yeah, and also if your horse is struggling with weight, then you're going to have to be careful with your fitness program because you don't want it to lose what fat it does have to muscle. And they also get mentally, the fitter they are physically, the more wound up they'll get mentally, realistically. So if you've got a stressy horse, the fitter he is, he's probably going to get more stressy, that type of thing. Romilly, what were you saying might affect the horse's fitness program?
In the winter, mine are in the during the night. Yeah, and then out by day, and then the summer it's the other way around, so they're in by night. And if they're in more, especially in the winter, if you're limited on turnout, they can't get being turned out. They gain a lot of fitness by running around and being
Yeah, and that's true. In the wild, they'll walk about 20 miles a day, just from wandering around. So if they're stuck in the stable, they're going to have less fitness. What else? What might have affected your horse's fitness program this year?
How long they were off for.
Yeah. What else?
How much you're around.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if you've got A-levels, and that's a reasonable thing to say, if you've got A-levels or GCSEs and you're not around, your horse's fitness program is going to struggle. What is a very, what would prevent you at the moment from keeping your horse
Can't
fit?
go anywhere to.
You can't use competitions to get them fit to train them.
Yeah. What else?
The weather.
The weather. Yeah. What about the weather?
If it's
It's
hot,
too hot,
then
you don't want
can't
to
ride them that much.
Yeah. You don't want them overheating. What else about the weather?
What's the difference in weather?
The change in the ground conditions. Too hard.
That's what I was getting at. So the ground is too hard at the moment to canter your horse on the grass, realistically. So unless you have access to an all-weather gallops or your arena is big enough to do canter work in the arena, you're unlikely to be able to do the same amount of fitness work that you would be able to do if the grass was good. You don't want to overdo work on rock hard ground because it could cause an injury. Talking of injuries, what else might affect your horse's fitness program?
An injury.
Yeah, so that's another thing you've got to consider. Not just the horse, but also the rider. If you get an injury, what's going to happen? That type of thing. So just have a few in your head. What might affect the fitness? What's going to affect the fitness program? The most common things are the weather, and therefore the ground condition and injuries. Because that, as we've spoken about, it's difficult to keep your horse fit when the ground's like this. Okay, I know Romilly was talking about keeping your horses in stable or at grass and the benefits of turning them out and that they keep themselves fitter. What are some other benefits of keeping different types of horses in a stable or at grass for peak performance? What effects do each have, basically?
Flies. So like my old horse got really bad sweet itch because of flies, so she had to go in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something, and if she's itchy and scratchy, she's not going to be happy in herself and probably won't perform that well. What else?
If you have really lush grass in the field, they might put on quite a lot of weight, and then
Yeah, so and that's things to think about, like laminitis, Cushing's, that type of thing. What else?
Quite often when horses are in too much, they get like quite stressed out. So when I was at a livery yard, he wasn't turned out quite as much, but now he's turned out a lot more and he's like chilled.
Yeah,
So,
horses that don't get turned out much can get very wound up and therefore be difficult to ride. If you've got an extremely fresh, wound up horse, when's the best time to turn it out?
As much as you can.
Yeah, as much as you can. If you only have the option of either turning it out during the day or at night, what would you do?
would it be night?
Night, because you ride them in the day, so it's less time.
Yeah, so that's one point. Another point is they just won't sleep as well. Although a horse can sleep standing up, they only get their deep sleep when they're lying down. They're less likely to lie down and relax in the field. They're less likely to just stop and do nothing overnight in the field. They basically won't sleep as well in the field if you turn them out overnight, and therefore they'll be more tired during the day because that's when they'll be doing their resting. So if you've got a really fresh horse that you need to take the edge off of, you can turn it out overnight and that will probably help. But as you say, the more you can turn it out, the better. Equally, if you've got a horse that's a bit flat, you'd probably do the opposite. You'd turn it out during the day. So it depends on what type of horse you have and how they perform best. And it's also worth trying different things. So it might be that I had a horse that we had to turn out the morning of an event or I would get bucked off. So think about your horse and how it will perform best. So one of my horses, if he gets turned out, he gets stressed. So he actually prefers to be in the stable. As I said, this one, he just needed to have a runabout, a kick, a buck, and then you'd be absolutely fine and he'd then be calm for the rest of the day. So your turning out routine should change as the horse gets fitter, first of all, because your horse will need different things. And secondly, you need to think about what that horse needs. Talking about that sleep, when they're what should you do with your horse? So say you've done the pony club open areas, what are you going to do with your horse that afternoon / that evening? So let's do it from you've just finished the cross country. What are you going to do?
Walk him down.
Yeah, walking around. What else?
Put like water on them and then scrape it off and water on them.
Yeah, thorough wash down until they're fully cold. What else?
Ice their legs.
Yeah, you might ice their legs. So we've recovered from the cross country. He's cooled down. He's had ice in his legs. What will you do that evening with him?
You probably want to turn him out because then he can have a bit more movement. He's less likely to be stiff the next day.
Yeah.
Does it check their legs for injuries as well?
Yeah. So there's two different arguments. Some people prefer to turn the horses out. Some people keep them in. So by turning them out, as you say, they can stretch, they can stay loose, that type of thing. However, like I just said, they're not going to sleep as well, so they won't mentally recover quite as much. Again, it depends on what your horse struggles with. If you've got a horse that comes out the day after a competition really stiff, you'd be better off turning out that night and then bring it in the next day and letting it sleep during the day. Or if you've got a horse that just wants to lie down and sleep after an event, leave it in overnight and turn it out the next day, that type of thing. So again, that's just something to consider. What might you give your horse the evening of or the day before an event?
Probably like a light hack, like a leg stretcher, so that if they're stiff, you can unstiff them.
Anything in particular in their feed you might add to help them a bit?
Like liquid, like a lot of like water for this.
Yes, you want them really hydrated, and the more hydrated they are, the quicker they'll recover. What else? Thinking about hydration and muscle recovery.
Electrolytes?
Yeah, electrolytes. So again, it's a really important thing to think about when you're looking after a horse who's done intense work. You want them on electrolytes probably if they've got a really big competition a couple of days before and a couple of days after. What do the electrolytes do?
Replenishes their salt.
Yeah, so it helps keep them hydrated basically. Cool. Right, so that's most of the stuff about horses. Why is fitness so important for the rider?
If you're not fit, then you can't ride as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's effectiveness, how effective you're going to be. So as you said, if you're not fit, you might get a few minutes through the cross-country round riding absolutely fine, and then in the last couple of minutes start riding a bit worse. How might tiredness affect you as a rider?
You might like lose concentration and forget where you're going.
Yeah, lose concentration, and not just forget where you're going, but just you need the concentration to help your horse out, particularly if your horse is getting tired at the end of the course. You don't want to also be tired. How else might it affect you if you're...
It affects your strength.
Yeah. So probably the most important thing if you're thinking about cross country there is your core strength. So your horse, because it's going to be tired, is more likely to trip or make a mistake at the end of the course. You basically need to know that you're fit enough to help the horse out through its tiredness. So it's your responsibility as the rider to be physically and mentally fit enough to help the horse when the horse is too tired. So it's a really important thing to think of. Is riding your horse every day enough fitness, or do you think that you should be doing more?
More.
Yeah.
Like riding your horse every day isn't necessarily going to be galloping and jumping and sitting out of the stirrups all the time.
Yeah, so you want to be doing a bit of all-round fitness. I'm guessing you guys probably all still play sports at school, which is a really good way to stay fit because you don't need to specifically be doing one thing or another, but it's just that general all-round fitness. Going on runs, that type of thing is a really good thing to do. You also need to recover. If you're at a point, you might have 2 horses at an event, you need to be fit enough to ride those 2 horses. So you also need to increase your fitness as your tasks get harder and harder. How will your nutrition affect your performance?
Like on
Your strength.
Yeah, so a lot to do with strength. And how important is your nutrition on the day of an event?
you need energy, like energy.
Yeah, so it's really important to give yourself the correct nutrition every day, but in particular on the day of an event. And particularly, I don't know if any of you get nervous and don't want to eat, but it's important that you still eat something, and figure out what it is that you can eat, what you can cope with, and try and make sure you've always got it in the car or the lorry. And the same thing with, you've got to keep yourself hydrated, for the same reasons, to help the horse out when needed and so that you're at your best performance. So let's go, what type of thing would you eat? You're going from the pony club open areas. What food would you eat during that day?
Like oat bars, because they have like quite a lot of sugar in.
Yeah, so like oat protein type bars are good, and they're long release energy. What might you have for breakfast, let's say?
Porridge.
Maybe like a muesli or something.
Yeah, like a porridge and muesli. Again, it's the long release energy, the oats. Equally, that might make you feel a bit ill. So what else could you eat that's less oaty?
Weetabix?
Yeah, Weetabix. You could have just some toast, with like a fruit salad on the side, something like that. As you said, you can have like oat bars throughout the day. You've also got to consider when you plan your event, when you know what your times are, you've got to think about when you're going to eat. Because if you're doing, let's say, dressage at 11, show jumping at 12 and cross country at 1, you need to plan small snacks in between that time, so you're not going to have enough time to eat a full meal. But you can't, it would be a bad idea to not eat anything from when you start dressage to when you go cross country, because you're going to be quite flat by the time you finish. So that's something to consider. And what does it mean by mental resilience?
Like
kind of
how
got
strong you
three
are in the
people.
head to like make yourself keep going.
Yeah.
Being
Yeah.
able to mentally recover, so you have like a bad event or like a bad training, be able to like pick yourself back up.
Yeah. Particularly in equestrian sports, because your teammate is an animal, which you're not always in, you're never in full control of. They are unpredictable. And it's also unlike a lot of sports, because there are so many unknowns when you go to an event. You don't know what the ground's going to be like, you don't know what the course is going to be, you don't know always who else is going to be there, that type of thing. So how can you work on your own mental resilience? Let's do it at an event. What can you actively make sure you don't do, let's say in the warm-up arena?
Like ride nervously, so however nervous you are, like don't let the horse feel it.
Yeah, that's a good one. What else?
If you're warming up for show jumping, I don't know, but like if I jump way too big in the warm-up, like I psych myself out of it.
Yeah. Yep. So do you feel like if you're jumping, you don't have to jump the world in the warm-up? Your horse knows how to jump. The warm-up is just about warming up the muscles. When you're in the warm-up arena, it's not the time to start training your horse or you. It's just a warm-up. What about, do any of you look at other people in the warm-up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I compare.
Yeah, and compare yourself, and probably then start worrying because their horses look amazing and they look amazing. So that's a really difficult one to do, but a really good one to do when you're thinking about your mental resilience, is try and actively focus on just yourself. And whether you can ride around with some headphones in, or whether you, I don't know, do something beforehand, or whether you take yourself off to a corner. There are things on the day that you can do just to keep your head on your game rather than what everyone else is doing. What about in between events? What can you do to help with your mental resilience when you get to an event?
Kind of, if you've had a problem kind of in the past, maybe go and particularly work on that.
Yeah.
Say my pony's not great with hedges. Just go and actually don't do anything too difficult.
Yeah.
It's something like fairly small, just to kind of get your confidence a bit. Maybe get someone to give you a lead over it or something.
Yeah, so build confidence between the events. So when you get to the event, you're not like, oh, can I do it? Can I not do it? You want to get to your event having complete confidence in your horse. And that might mean the 2 days before you go to an event, you don't push yourself, you don't do anything difficult. You might do something you know your horse is good at. So let's say your horse has an incredible medium trot. The day before your event, you work on the medium trot just to boost your own self-confidence if you're struggling with your mental resilience. And equally, something that's quite a good little trick is if you're worrying and struggling, look at past videos where you've done well or your horse has gone really well, just to remind yourself of when it goes well. So that's just something, it's not in the V test, but it's quite an important thing. We talk a lot about the fitness of the horse and the mental well-being of the horse, but they aren't going to compete well if your head isn't in the right place. So really important to think about that with yourself, and that's a long-term thing as well as with the horse. Horses that are fizzy, you spend your entire time with them calming them down. If you're mentally fizzy when you go to an event, you have to actively work on it in your training as well as at competitions to try and make it better. Okay, does anyone have any questions on any of that? No? Cool. Right, I don't know if Alison's still there. Alison? No, she isn't. Okay, well, have a really nice weekend, everyone. And see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unmute. Hi, Sash.
Okay.
You okay? Good session?
Yeah.
All good?
Yeah.
Are you hungry? You're hungry.